Hey, good morning, guys. This presentation is to kind of help you along with the research opportunity we started last class. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are the things that cause weather. Some of the things that cause weather, obviously what we're looking at latitude, we're looking at precipitation, we're looking at air pressure, wind speeds, the uplift of air, all of these things. We're going to look for relationships in the things that cause weather and see if one thing is related to another. So some of the research questions that you could come up with, here's just a few examples. Some of the things, the way you want to set it up is there a relationship between one variable and another? And what you're going to need to determine is how will I go about finding data and what kind of data would I need to be able to establish a relationship. Here's just a few examples. Feel free to use these if you'd like, if you're struggling for an idea. But is there a relationship between barometric pressure and temperature? Is there a relationship between pressure and precipitation, pressure and wind speed, temperature dew point and precipitation, pressure and cloudiness, wind speed and temperature? Those are all weather phenomena. Those are things that you're looking at day to day, hour to hour. But then you've got carbon dioxide levels over time and temperature changes. You have altitude and precipitation amounts. Those things you're really looking at. You're looking at climate data, so you're going to look for things over a greater term. So the next thing that you need to look at is how can we get data to test our research questions? So obviously you're going to need weather data. And when you're looking for weather data, you're basically saying, okay, how are we going to be able to reduce the bias or error in our investigation? What I'm asking you here is how are we going to be able to isolate the variables we're trying to prove a relationship between? We want to make sure that everything else will be constant. So if we're looking at hourly versus daily measurements, hourly for some of those research questions would certainly be better because it'll give us a much finer detailed information, but some patterns may not show up at that fine of a scale. Okay, so we may need to look hourly over a period of days. You may need to look at a span of 30 days initially to where you're looking at hourly measurements between barometric pressure and temperature, or you're looking at hourly measurements between barometric pressure and cloudiness. So you're looking for historical data, and then if you see a pattern that is developing, then you might actually be able to expand your time frame. And then there's the, do we want to look at daily data, or do we want to look at whole year data, or do we want to choose a time frame? Okay, you could average measurements for every single day of the year, but that we know that there are certain times of the year where the weather's changing because of seasonal differences. Here is just a way of maybe saying, okay, here are some time periods that we can look at that kind of help to isolate our variables and try to keep things constant. You can look at a period of days between January 22nd and February 19th. So you're looking at the middle of winter, so it's far enough away from the solstice and the equinox. You're looking at mid-spring, April 20 to May 20, midsummer, July 21 to August 20, mid-fall, October 21 to November 20. These are pretty good 30-day measurements that don't correspond with the extremes of the solstices or the equinoxes. How can you reduce bias or error in the investigation? Thinking about one location versus multiple locations. You don't want to confuse any patterns by adding variables. Different locations could behave differently. So if you're looking at something that is dealing with relationships between strict weather things, barometric pressure, and cloudiness, you probably want to just get data for one location. However, if you're looking for how does altitude affect overall precipitation levels, that's climate data. So you want to get locations that are at different altitudes, obviously. But one of the things you should probably consider is if I've got places where I'm looking at altitude, I want to make sure that that is the only variable that is really coming into play. I don't want to use places that are at different latitudes because obviously the amount of solar radiation that those places are getting is going to be different. I want to make sure that they are about the same distance or distance away from a water body or on the same side of a water body. You probably don't want to worry too much about ocean currents influencing the climate there. So those are some things to consider as well. Then you really have to kind of look at what data are you getting. The best website I think to do this kind of research is Weather Underground, which is wunderground.com. They can give you daily averages. They can give you a single measurement for the day. You can actually get time-lapse data, so you can actually see hourly data depending upon what location it is. And then what are you going to do? What's your product going to be? You're going to wind up communicating your data. You're going to create graphs. You're going to analyze the graphs to examine your research question. You're going to create line graphs with time on the X and the variable of interest on the Y. Obviously, you can use two secondary Y-axes if the variables aren't on the same scale or measurement scale. You're going to analyze the data. You're going to look for patterns in the data, look for patterns in the graph. Does one drop while the other goes up? Do they both increase at the same time? Things like that. Then you're going to repeat the procedure using data from another year or another time frame. Do those patterns stay or do those patterns go away? Okay, and then you're going to wind up repeating the procedure using data from more years. The more data you can get, the better your results are going to be, and the better you're going to be able to say, yes, there is a relationship because it repeats over a number of different time periods. So that's all I've got for you. So, using one computer per group, you need to come up with what your overall research question is. You guys can use your phones to help get data. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get a laptop cart for you guys for today, but there is a cart here in Mr. B's room, here in room 406 over by the windows that's got, I believe, one computer for each grouping. So you should be able to use that. I will see you guys next week. Talk to you soon. Be well.